Oh, look who's here.
We need a new intro.
Because we can't do the old one.
We're not doing the old one anymore. That ship sailed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, guys, we need a new intro. But hi, I'm here. I'm on Pontificating with Pete.
Yeah. Something pretty big happened today.
Yes.
And
something very big happened today, guys.
I think it's fair to say
you
that
need to move over.
because of what happened,
yeah,
it would only be appropriate for Jen to be here to talk about how our channel, quite frankly, got shadow banned. Got shadow banned because of one reason. We did what?
One of the first things we did as a channel was we did a live stream with multiple panels for Julian Assange. That was one of the first things that we did as a channel. And from that point on, we were definitely on the shadow ban list. We have seen so many YouTube shows come after us and so far surpass us in terms of their ability to get subscribers based on how often they get recommended. And we were never really careful about the algorithm. We were just doing what we wanted to do and covering what we wanted to cover. And I was just being Jen. And so we didn't really do our content based on that or in any way securing that. And it's a problem. You know, that's one of the reasons that we don't get as much good information as we would like in other platforms as well. It's just these people are not the people that get their stuff recommended and suggested. So we're stuck. But anyway, hey all. Hey Metal. Hey Chris. Travers. And Jimmy Zimzam is now a Patreon.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Yes.
And of course, make sure that you do smash that like button.
So guys, does everybody know? Has everybody heard? Does everybody know?
Yeah.
Because I just found out. I literally just got off the dialer not that long ago. So I really just found out. But apparently, Julian Assange has reached an agreement with the United States. From what I saw, I only took a quick glance at it. It looks like he's pleading guilty to a conspiracy charge. Obviously, I completely disagree with that and think that that is like an abomination of so many different things. But at the end of the day, it looks like Julian Assange is going to be able to go back to Australia and be free. So obviously, whatever has to happen for that to happen is, oh, Double K. I do love you, Double K. So obviously, I'm in full support of whatever that deal is, whatever Julian had to do. The fact that he maintained his integrity, he never gave them what they wanted. Okay, him taking a deal, all that does is allows him to go free. It is, as far as I'm concerned, it's an admission of nothing. And this whole thing, as everyone knows, is just like, it's funny that I would call it a kangaroo court because it is actually related to an Australian national. So it is kind of a funny thing, but
not entirely surprising.
But yeah, so I don't know all the details yet about what that looks like and what the timing will be. So I can't really report on that. But you don't trust it. Assange should be charged with nothing and he's a journalist. I agree, Metal. I agree. I don't either. But look, I've always said this. I've been saying this for the past few months, that the U.S. is, whatever they do, they're going to need to save face. Whatever they do at this point has to be something where they feel like they don't come off looking like the complete buffoons that they are. So it doesn't shock me that he had to do whatever he had to do. But at the end of the day, no one shall ever forget that Julian Assange never gave them what they wanted in terms of telling them that, oh, well, he told Chelsea Manning to get the information for him. Julian Assange never told them who any of his sources were for anything, no matter what they threw at him. Okay, that is a hero. That is a hero. We should be building monuments. But in any event, so I am very happy to be on the day that I find out that Julian Assange is finally going to be freed.
Another free speech person. Well, that's what any comedian would be, right?
Yes. Free speech is well, you guys know I'm like pretty much a free speech absolutist. I really am. Hate speech doesn't bother me at all. It really doesn't. I like to know who my bigots are, people. You know it. You know, it's not like they don't exist just because they don't say it out loud.
Colin, please check the private chat.
And truthfully, you know, big difference between hate speech and hate crime. Hate speech and hate crime. Nuance matters, people. Nuance matters. If someone wants to walk up and down my street yelling, you know, racial epithets, all the power to them. Now, if somebody from the race that they're epithetting goes up and clocks them, I'm not going to have a problem with that either, you know. But again, I like to know who the bigots are. Doesn't offend me.
Well, if anybody knows who the bigots are, it's definitely two of your good friends and kind of the connection between you.
Okay, so yeah, guys. So I'm going to tell the background
don't
story.
Tell it yet.
No,
bring her in.
You want? Oh, okay. You don't want me to say the background first.
No, you can. No, we'll bring her.
Okay.
In, and then I think, well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I guess, yeah.
Either way.
I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
She is a very outspoken stand-up comedian who's trying to actually bring back what comedy's all about, which is awesome. And if you haven't checked her out on Instagram, you better get over there because the self-deprecating humor always works on me because I'm from New Jersey. And with that being said, this is somebody who is in a very similar boat as Jen regarding what is going on right now with Israel Palestine. It's a conversation we are very much looking forward to. Jess Salomon, welcome to Pontificating with Pete on Generational Change.
Oh, hi. Look at that. This is so smooth. I haven't done this like live YouTube, SteamYard. Anyway.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet you. So we were just sort of debating on like just to whether or not we should tell the background story as to how I found you before. Okay. But I thought since we've not met, I thought it would be good for me to tell you like what the background is, like how I found you and why we
me posting your video.
Here's the thing. I am not on social media. I'm not on social. I haven't been in 3 years and everyone knows that. This is my social media. So I don't know anything about anything. However, I have a friend, a very good friend down here who is Jewish and she's married to a Palestinian woman. And this friend of mine follows you and sent me, apparently saw this thing. And she's like, there is another woman who is Jewish and with a Palestinian woman. And like her dream is basically to create like an entire club of these couples. And so it is my understanding that you are no longer with a Palestinian woman, but that is how I originally found you. And she forwarded me your links because she said, this woman's talking about you. And so that is how I found you.
Okay. Well, first of all, congrats for not being on social media. That's good. Yeah, that's good to have somebody that filters that for you. And yeah, and also I think you're like pretty up to date on stuff more than most people because that separation is pretty new and not necessarily out there. But it's not that it's a secret anyway. Here we
so how did you find me like that? I'm curious, like how'd that happen?
So honestly, it was the algorithm fed me a sponsored ad that was your campaign video, or at least the one that I shared, which is you talking about your like indoctrination and unlearning and atonement. And I had truly never seen anything like it or imagined. Like, I know that obviously we're not alone in this, but I'd never seen this I'd seen it as an op-ed, I'd seen it as an essay, I'd seen it not as a campaign ad for an American Congress seat, a seat in Congress. This is where like my Canadian comes out. What do you call it?
Wait, you're a Canucky? You're a Canucky? Where are you from?
I'm from Montreal.
Okay. So you're for French Canucky.
The French part of Canada, which is why I'm hot. Thank you.
Okay, and yet your tribe, is that right? Like your tribe is my understanding.
My tribe is what do you mean?
You're Jewish, aren't you? You are Jewish. That's what I mean. Yeah.
My tribe is on my father's side for a few generations, Montreal.
Right.
Jewish, Ashkenazi, originally from Eastern Europe from many years ago. and very similar Jewish immigration to New York and Montreal. Like that's why we have this whole battle of the, smoked meat versus pastrami and the bagels and all of that. And then on my mom's side, my family lives in South America, in Peru, and my grandparents came from Poland and Egypt to Peru. And so all this to say that between the South American side and the Canadian side, I have a connection to Florida, to Miami, and some other parts where a lot of Canadians go and a lot of Latin Americans go. So I'm familiar with your district.
So you understand the nature of the demographics in which I reside, right? Like this is it, there's definitely a large Jewish contingency here. There are definitely some seriously outspoken Zionists here. No doubt we have a very large Israeli population. But at the end of the day, what's right is right. Like what you know what I mean? What's right is right. Well, I'm not going to not say it.
Well, for those of you who don't know, and thank you so much for reposting the clip. Obviously, it boosted our campaign considerably. A lot of others.
I mean, it performed better than my comedy videos for sure.
All right, so you could take credit. I'll give you that. That's good. But this is how you obviously, I believe, found Jen. And of course, this has been taking off considerably. I think it's gone on some eyes of some bigger platforms than ours that now want to talk to you. So hey, listen, you have a lot to do with this. We really appreciate it. But for those of you who haven't seen yet, Jen's official campaign ad, here we go. And
you're going to play it now?
Yes,
Okay.
This is me at 16 years old in Israel on a high school trip holding an assault rifle. And this is the definition of indoctrination. I grew up in North Miami Beach. I grew up in a very insulated, very Jewish community. We were taught that Palestine and Palestinians, that's not a real thing, that was made up by Arabs. Everybody over there that wasn't Jewish was just Arabs. But the message was always clear that Jews were not safe and that the Arabs wanted to hurt us. My relatives, my great-grandmother, my grandmother were raised with this fear mentality that without the state of Israel, Jews around the world will not be safe. True history was kept from us. We were propagandized. But as I grew older, I began to see a different reality unfolding. I witnessed the rise of the Israeli lobby, exerting its influence on our politics and policies. I learned about the injustices happening thousands of miles away in the name of Jewish people. And I can't stay silent in the face of such injustice. The right to return denied to so many Palestinians. The war fueled by the Israeli government and sanctioned by our own country, condemned by the UN and the International Court of Justice as genocide. We cannot turn a blind eye to this injustice any longer. To me, atonement is really taking accountability for your participation in something that you now realize was not correct in some way and wronged people in some way. I participated in an ethnic cleansing state. I do not feel powerless. I feel hopeful. It is time for us to use our voices to stand in solidarity with the oppressed, to demand accountability from our leaders. As a candidate, as a mother, as an ally, I pledge to fight for justice and equity for everyone, here at home and abroad. For there can be no peace without true justice. I'm Jen Perlman. I'm running for Congress, Florida's 25th district. All I see is a hot, sweaty mess at the end of that video.
I know. I'm like kind of emotional still. Like I just really, I've just never seen it done like that in a campaign ad. And honestly, like haven't had a lot of good things to say about Meta and all of the silencing, but it fed your ad to like right to me. And I was because of the silencing, I was so nervous. I've been so nervous to like lose my account for some reason, and one of the dumb reasons, which I've been flagged for, is like, is this an ad? and things that are not ads. And so
Yeah.
I didn't even like really tag you or anything, because I was like, I just want to share this without it being flagged as anything. And it resonated so much with people in my feed. And anyway, it was really, really, really powerful. And I think, you know, many people wanting to move to Florida just to vote for you.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing. You know, which is a good thing to know, because one of the things we talk about the incumbent, about Debbie Wasserman Schultz, other than the policy and the issues, is that she's been bad for the party in terms of like causing so many people to leave the party, and certainly not inspiring people to register as Democrats. So the idea that I would actually inspire people to come here and vote is like, that's just good to know.
I mean, I really hope, I think you have a great chance. I read that, you know, that this isn't the first time that you run, and that you ran during the pandemic for the first time and had still like a pretty sizable percentage. So I hope that people, because I understand that like people are reluctant to turn out in terms of the presidential choices at the moment. Yeah. But regardless, I think it's important that people turn out to vote down the ballot, right? I think there's a lot of other, I say all this as someone who is a green card holder and can't vote, but there's a lot of things I've learned. I wasn't able to work at the polls, and
oh, wow.
Or even vote, like you can't vote for the mayor in New York, like unless you are a citizen. So sometimes, but at the same time, I can still talk.
But let's talk about that for a second, because let's all think about that for a second. So you can't even be a poll watcher because you're Canadian, is what you're saying. Okay. Yeah. However, Israel can buy Congress.
Oh yeah.
Like let's think about the irony of that. Yeah.
Well, they put in a lot of money, and our current representative is somebody who not only takes that money hand over fist, but has a very cordial relationship, to put it very gently, with Bibi Netanyahu, which is a huge problem. And so, I mean, this isn't really something that I can answer. I think you two would probably answer it a lot better, but having come from that type of a background and seeing the backlash that's happening, it is very tough to break away from this Zionism that we see. But at the same time, I think they have to have a clue that the way that they're reacting, which is extremely vitriolic and angry, and to me, if you were actually right on your issue, your principle, then you wouldn't have to act that way. It'd be very easy for people to find your side and say, okay, makes total sense. But in this case, it seems to me that this issue runs very deep for a lot of people, because they're almost afraid to know what the truth is, and the truth is not what they're going to like. In fact, it's probably going to be the complete opposite of what they've always been taught. How do you see it as of right now?
So I think that this moment has been, you know, very illuminating. It's exposed certainly the U.S. In ways that I didn't imagine. You know, as someone I've been pretty vocal about this at least for 10 years, and you know, the process started before that, but let's say vocal on social media for at least 10 years. And so things with Israel don't really surprise me. I understand why Israel's been trending in this direction, because when there's no accountability, when it's only impunity, when your state is the manifestation of an ideology that is based on white supremacy or Jewish supremacy, whatever you want to call it, it's only going to become more extreme. And the people that are invested in it are going to have to defend more and more extreme things as they, you know, if they want to remain in this world. I mean, it's very hard for me to understand, because I don't have, let's say, like MAGA people in my world, in my family. But I do, mostly everybody is a Zionist. And it's so hard for me to like hear them to say things like, well, what does Donald Trump have to do for these people to realize, you know, to stop supporting him? They're like literally saying this. And I'm like, do you not hear how it's exactly the same thing with Israel? But the cognitive dissonance, I mean, really, the only way that I can think about it is as a cult, you know, because
that's what I say. That's exactly what I say. It's a cult.
Because these people that I know they wouldn't hold these positions if it was not a Jewish state. And if they hadn't learned this so young, not just, the absence of Palestinians as a people on the land, not just only if they are mentioned that they are an existential threat, but the fear around the need for a Jewish state, like that is something, before comedy, I worked as a war crimes lawyer in The Hague at the Tribunal for the Former Yugoslavia. Ooh. And so I used to be a lawyer, and I went into that because as a kid, I was like very, I was taught about the Holocaust, and I was a very sensitive kid and someone who was very, especially when I was younger, like I paid a lot of attention in class, whether it was like the little bit of after school Jewish education I had, like I very much absorbed these lessons. And so I was correspondingly always upset about the Holocaust. Like as a kid, always worried that I didn't go to Jewish school. So I was always prepared for the Nazis to walk in at any moment and be given up. Like this was because everyone was like, there were like 3 Jewish kids in my class. I didn't do like a lot of what you did, Jen. But what I had was, like a couple days after school for a few years. And then just like the reinforcement of the 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. news that was otherwise available to everybody in the West. Right. And so, I think that when it's hard for me, it's hard because I don't know how to explain it. Like, in a way, what's been so disappointing is like my family, we had a Palestinian person there, yes. And no one ever expressed any openness or willingness to learn from her or from me, right? And over a very long period of time, and as things got clearly more and more right-wing in Israel, they didn't want to know, and they felt that they were doing something generous and progressive by including us, by tolerating us, and by agreeing just not to talk about it. Like this was everyone's position, whether it was family in Peru or family in Montreal or whatever. Right. And it's infuriating because I've been, trying to be heard for a long time and to warn basically about this happening.
Yeah. It's very isolating feeling I feel like it's a lot of Jewish people that I've spoken to that are on the correct side of history feel very isolated. And very much so, whether it's family or just their community that they're used to sort of being part of. I mean, I have people that are not talking to me and haven't spoken to me in months.
But when did it start for you? Like, I mean, I know November, I don't want to interview you, but
yeah, November was when it really started happening for me, which now that I think about it, it makes sense because I've said it sort of repeatedly. For me, I give everyone a 3-week grace period post October 7th to get their head on straight. And if your head hasn't gotten on straight in that first 3 weeks, while I do appreciate everybody coming over at any point in time, we welcome all converts over to the right side of history. But for me personally, as people in my personal life, I give a 3-week grace period. And when you were not on the right side of history in that amount of time, you're not my people.
Right.
And that's just my personal, in my mind, that's sort of where I'm at. And so, yeah, I would say 3 weeks after October 7th was when I think I started really ramping up about my thoughts on this and where I stand on this. And it alienated some of my people.
But when did you start your first campaign in 2020?
Yeah.
Were you speaking about it then?
No. Now, when I was running in 2020, privately, and personally, I very much was aware of what was going on at that point. In my personal life, amongst my non-campaign people, was very clear that I was sure that Israel was an apartheid state. And that I knew that they were in violation of international law. I knew I knew that Gaza was a concentration camp. Like I was already where I am now with that. The only difference was in 2020 was I still was sort of holding out hope that there was the possibility of a 2-state solution. Mm-hmm. Whereas now I don't even, honestly,
That is sort of the last step in the process.
Right. That was sort of the final thing. But campaign-wise, it wasn't one of the key issues, quite honestly. I mean, we weren't in the situation we're in right now. And I was really focusing, like I normally do, on things like healthcare and housing and living wage jobs, which are, prior to, October 7th, was the main things that I was focusing on in terms of, our campaign. Like
Right.
what would be my main talking points would be those issues. And they still are for a lot of people, because those are still very important issues.
Right, but this, I mean, I guess in a very direct way, in terms of where money is going, ties into some of that. Yeah.
It does. And for me, and also, since you don't know me well and whatever, one of the things that we talk about a lot here is the idea of modern monetary theory, which I don't know if you're familiar with modern monetary theory, but it's the premise that it is not a pie, right? Like we look at it. So like if our tax dollars, we say our tax dollars are going to this, so that's what our tax dollars federally don't go anywhere. They don't go anywhere. They don't do anything. That doesn't mean anything. No, there's not some lady sitting in a room counting up the tax dollars and saying, okay, now we can spend this much here and this much here, right? It doesn't work that way. And so at the end of the day, that concept, to me, it's important because it feeds this austerity myth, this pie concept that we're taught, so that we're always fighting over resources and fighting over scraps when we don't need to be. And so while it does infuriate me that our collective resources and that we're sanctioning and funding a genocide, I just don't ever like the kind of link to it to our tax dollars. That is sort of just like, because it perpetuates that myth that if we're paying for this thing, we can't have this, when in fact, we could have it all. So that is
that because like money is not real and they just print whatever. Like, what's the basis for, you're blowing my mind. Like, this is
okay. So I'm going to suggest, we've covered this many times. We have a friend of our show. His name is Steve Grumbine, and he is my MMT guru. But actually, there are books about this. And the concept is, okay, your federal tax dollars, right? It has nothing to do with the budget or what we do. That's just money that gets deleted into thin air. It doesn't pay for anything. State and municipal tax dollars, that pays for things, because they're not currency creators, right? Like you have to be a currency issuer for that to be the case. So it only applies to federal income tax. Let me be very clear on that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Doesn't Florida not have any taxes?
We don't have income tax. We don't have state income tax here. Correct.
Okay. Other taxes you have?
Oh, we have property taxes. We have sales taxes. We have all sorts of taxes. But yeah, MMT is important as somebody that is on the progressive side of things, because the constant battle that we get is how you going to pay for it, when in fact, we pay for it by how we pay for everything else, like the war in Israel, right? The genocide in Israel. We pay for it the same way. Our government decides what it wants to spend money on, and it issues that money. That's how it works. Now, the tax dollars regulates the economy. It regulates things. And obviously, there are issues that have to be thought about, like inflation. And Steve is going to be so proud of me for this. Steve's going to be so proud of me for this. Yeah. But yeah, and I wish I understood it as well as economists that know this understand it. But at the end of the day, words matter. And I really want to get away from the austerity myth that if our tax dollars is what decides what we can and cannot afford, because that's not how it works. No. Not with international, not with the military industrial complex.
No, but basically what we're dealing with is a system that the money is being distributed, but it's basically like a clogged hose, where only a very small percentage of the economic makeup in this country is getting their hands on the money. You could say it's the banking system. You could say it's the multinational corporations like Amazon and Walmart. But the fact of the matter is, they are the ones that are getting the resources, the job creators, if you will. And so we could have universal health care easily, because it actually costs less than what we're paying now. That is a proven fact.
That I do know. That I do know, but
And
I'm
even being, and
so
even
done
being,
with economy. Like, you know what?
Yeah, well, that's why it's always interesting when I meet people that find me for a particular topic,
Mhm.
and other stuff is new. And we've been doing this show for over 3.5 years now. And so we have so much content on these things that I sometimes do sort of take it for granted because we have our regulars and we have people that follow. But yeah, it's called Modern Monetary Theory.
Okay.
And there's you could like easily look up like the basic concept of it without having to read like a dissertation. But it's important to know if you support things like single payer healthcare, or you support things like tuition-free public college, that when people say, how are you going to pay for it? This is what we need to understand to combat that austerity narrative.
Okay, this is good for me to know because I guess I came into the U.S. from Canada and probably from one of the most like social program oriented provinces, and I realized that I pay, certainly in New York as a New York resident, more tax actually here than I did in Canada, and of course I get almost like the zero for it. And it's a very wealthy country. I pay a lot of tax. New York is an extremely wealthy city, and pieces of the subway are falling on your head, or it's raining on you, or like it's like, and why? So in my mind, it's like, oh, it's going to the military. That's why.
No, you want to know why? Because I can tell you why that is. Because I see it every day. He knows what I call it. It's de facto corruption. And what that is to me, and I see it every day when I drive in Florida and we're on the highways and our infrastructure looks like trash, like we're a country that has no resources. And yet I know I live in one of the richest states in the country, not just in a rich country, but in one of the richest states in the country. And it looks like it does. The only explanation is corruption. So here's what I know. I know that the state has the money. The money goes in because here's an example where our tax dollars do pay, because this is state. So the money goes in, and yet the work doesn't get done. And in law school, we call that res ipsa loquitur, which is the thing speaks for itself. And it basically proves its own case. And that's what that is. Res, R-E-S, ipsa, I-P-S-A, loquitur, L-O-Q-U-I-T-O-R, loquitur.
Okay, yeah.
But we just say res ipsa. And that means like, it's like something that only happens because of this, right? Like there's no other explanation. That's what this is. And that is why the subway is caving in. That is why. It is not because they can't afford to do it. That is not why. It is because somebody's skimming the money.
I want to see one of those, those like that cartoon of like how a bill becomes a law.
Yes.
But like with the money.
Schoolhouse Rocks, like a real one.
Like where like you pay your tax and then like where,
Actually, if you're
I need.
Actually, you should look up a show. Our friend Steve, that is my MMT person. Do you watch YouTube? Obviously, you watch some stuff, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So he has a show called Real Progressives, and he also has a podcast called Macro and Cheese, and it's all about basically like macroeconomics for dummies. Which is perfect for me. And that is how I've learned a lot of the things that I've learned. And I've even been a guest. I think I win the record for like the dumbest guest that's probably been on Macro and Cheese. But and then he even does something called Macro and Chill, which is just even the recap of the Macro and Cheese. But anyway, that would be a good thing if you're interested in this.
I should say, and also I think, for people that are watching this, that you are very smart and I am very smart, but there are, especially people that go to law school, like, we have a facility for understanding like certain things, certainly the legal system and reasoning and logic and words, but the money thing, the economy, it's like,
it's a whole different animal.
I think it's almost done on purpose so that nobody can really understand like what the stock market is doing.
It helps rich people. The stock market is only rich people.
It's all fake.
It only affects a very small percentage of people. It's rich people, how well they're doing. That's what the stock market tells you, is how well the rich people are doing. It does not tell us anything else. Neither does unemployment or the employment data. That also tells us nothing. You are being lied to very purposefully. And that is, by design. I hate to be the one to break this to you. Like, you must know.
I'm like, I've only just come to terms with the unlearning of Zionism. And now I'm like, feeling on very shaky ground.
Let me ask you, I want to ask you, where did you go to law school?
So I went to law school at McGill.
Is that Canada though? But it's Canada.
Yeah. In Montreal.
So did you learn French? Like, is it Napoleonic Code?
So I did, it's just, anyway, McGill has in Quebec, it's civil law, and in the rest of Canada, it's the common law system.
I know.
So so it depends, federally, like what jurisdiction, if it's like, let's say state jurisdiction or federal jurisdiction. And so everything federal is common law based, like the criminal law system is federal. So that's common law based, but property taxes, property contracts, torts, all of that is civil law. And so at McGill, because it's like an English predominantly law school, although we had you could take some classes in French, they did this system. Well, right before I started, you could do one and then stay another year, like do 3 years of common law and then do another year to get your civil law degree. But when I came in, they did it like trans-systemic. So you kind of learned both at the same time. And you could do it in like 3 years or I did 3.5 years. It was like, I didn't really learn either one. I think really it was the early days of this idea, because like you'd have an exam question. And you'd have to solve like the fact pattern, like the fact, for people that know, like the factual scenario. You'd have to do it like in the civil law and in the common law sometimes. Like, yes,
that's crazy. And for people who don't understand what we're talking about, like, because I've talked about this before, I went to law school in Texas, and one of the things we learned, so for here, Louisiana is like Quebec. Okay. So if you go to law school in Louisiana, in this country, you learn Napoleonic Code. Their bar exam is Napoleonic Code in Louisiana.
Wow.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So people who want to practice in Louisiana, generally that's where they go to school. And most people that go to law school other places wouldn't want to go like it's challenging. And that's one of the things, is it's totally different.
For me, I knew that I wanted to go into international law. And so it didn't really matter, like, to work in the UN. You just needed a reputable bar from some. It didn't have to be, it didn't matter if it was common or civil. And so I ended up getting the bar in Ontario because it was easier than doing it in French in Quebec. And, but that's interesting, because in Quebec, like we've had like, this question of going back to like Zionism, but we've had this question of self-determination because of Quebec being a separatist province, right? And the issue is like that. The argument was that they felt the need, the separatist movement that started in the 70s felt the need to protect the French language and the French culture so that it didn't become like Louisiana, where I didn't realize about the law, but that I have been, where it's sort of like, oh, this used to be the French Quarter, or like there's like a few street names and a few foods.
Right.
And like one guy that still speaks French, but the whole thing is like a matter of history. And so the idea was that like they needed to have their own country to separate from Canada in order for that to protect the French language and culture, right? And then over time, and there was, I'm pretty sure they the case was taken to the UN, and the UN said like you don't get necessarily a country if you're basically, you have a right to self-determination, like. You're not oppressed in Canada, and because like over time there were all these very stringent language laws and rules about laws about where you could go to school and about like signage, and in the workplace there's a lot of really laws that aren't constitutional in a general sense. Like they
It
wouldn't
sounds racist. It sounds racist.
Well, it's not because it's like white people versus white people.
No, I get it, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds ethno-statey, and ethno-state means ethno-cleanse.
Yes, but it's not that people are being, well, look, there are nationalist elements to it, and undercurrents for sure, and there is racism in Quebec, absolutely. But mostly the laws are about like you have to learn a language.
Right.
You have to learn this language, like, because you're going to live here, and this is a French province. And so we're going to have, and because we're in a sea of English and maybe Spanish, we are going to have rules like you have to have like the signs outside have to be in French. And if you move here, your kids, even if you move from England, your kids have to go to school in French. And like in the workplace, if you're office, if you have a business and you're over a certain number of people, I mean, so, but the thing is that, you know, people were very, you know, English people, a lot of people left to Ontario. And anyways, as a result, the positive was that it killed the separatist movement because these laws that were questionable, like did do the job over a couple generations of making everybody bilingual and or at least speaking French, and English people speaking French and English. And then, you know, the idea of like there was no more argument to be made that we need to have our own country in order
They didn't need it. They didn't need it anymore.
They did it. And of course it resurfaces because it's people sometimes need these wedge issues. But younger, like people my age and younger don't think about separatism at all. Like it's like passé composé.
So I want to ask you, so you're an attorney, but you're a comedian, right?
I know I have not been that funny in general. Like,
well, what do you like? Where do you work? Like, what's your like? Do you do like stand up? Are you in New York? Are you in the city? Like, where do you? What's your bag?
So I do stand up. I've done it a lot less in the last, I don't know, well, definitely since October. I've sort of just gotten very focused on, you know, just, the war, and it's been very consuming. And in a way, it's made it hard to do other things, I'd say. And I found like the most helpful thing for me mental health wise has been to engage with people online, which seems like the opposite, but for me, it's been a very positive experience in that I've like things I've been talking about for a long time, people, and also because I worked in international law and specifically at a tribunal where we, you know, dealt with war crimes and genocide and crimes against humanity, both for Yugoslavia and for Rwanda. Like when I've been trying to help people understand, you know, when it was the, you know, the ICJ's case or like the arrest warrants, but applications for arrest warrants at the ICC, and also to help people with, you know, answers to a lot of Zionist talking points. That's sort of been the main thing that outside of, you know, a lot of Arabs and Palestinians, like being so grateful for, you know, Jewish voices, because we can reach people, unfortunately, that they cannot. There's just all the people in the middle, like all the like, you know, Christian people or like the non-Arabs and non-Jews who don't have to unlearn. They're just learning because a lot of this was sort of made to seem complicated or the meat, you know. And so, but when they post something, they immediately get attacked because they're not Jewish, and they're immediately told that maybe they don't know and they mean well, but this is actually creating hate against Jewish people, and it could be seen as anti-Semitic, and you don't really understand the history, etc. And so, so I've been doing that more than stand up, but I do stand up, and I'm in Brooklyn, and I will be doing more.
Okay, what do you have?
So what I was going to say is when you talk about the Zionism and, you know, the standing, you know, people like using the crutch of, well, you're not a Jew, so you can't talk about this, or, you know, all the Zion. Well, again, this is also one of the biggest issues with Wasserman Schultz, is the fact that she basically led the charge for that resolution on Capitol Hill that said that Zionism and Judaism are one and
Well,
the same.
anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, but they're continually they're doing it. They're doing it now. They're doing it. This is the biggest problem right now.
Well, this is where it stems from. So earlier today, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but in Los Angeles, there is a synagogue. I don't have the name of it, but they were doing land sales. See, I know about Englewood, New Jersey, as I'm sure you do too. That is a town where they were doing this.
Also in Montreal and Toronto, by the way.
Not surprising. Oh, and by the way, a little something I learned over the weekend that you probably didn't know. Palm Beach County has invested $700 billion
in Israel bonds. Yes.
700 billion.
Mm-hmm.
700 billion?
With a B, $700 billion. And that is where my
you have to say it like that. Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds insane.
I know. It is insane, but is it really? Not really.
I guess not. It's Palm Beach.
Yeah, it's true. It's the equivalent to Westchester, who unfortunately may have their say tomorrow, but we can address that in a minute. So this is what happened earlier today. It kind of tells itself, because the Zionists want you to believe that these protesters are just showing up to hassle them. No, they're there protesting people having their land stolen from them. So that's one.
These people are just so gross. They're so vile, the way that the Zionists act. And I had
this whole trap, right? It's like we saw it, with the other synagogues, and then they call the police, and the police attack the protesters, and the whole thing is painted as anti-Semitic. Whereas fundamentally, and I did call the Canadian police, the RCMP, when this happened, and I didn't get anywhere, but I will, bring it up again. It is illegal. These settlements are illegal.
Yes.
And for a synagogue to be committing to have this, to host these sales of stolen settlement, recognized internationally as a crime, to do that at a synagogue that is, I believe in the U.S. also a not-for-profit,
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
All of this is the synagogue is, and the people behind it are committing a crime here in the U.S., there in Canada, and they should be prosecuted.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Yeah.
So a fight did break out, and we have one other clip that we want to play.
What?
So this happened. I think it's the same location.
Okay. Unbelievably crap. Oh. The violence is only coming from that side. It's only coming from that side.
Yeah.
The violence is only coming from Zionists and police. That's it. That's the only, and I've been to multiple things, and I am telling, without doubt, the Palestinian the protesters are so peaceful and so respectful. I have not seen anything happen other than Zionists be animals.
Well, they do that. They go there to provoke. They call the police, and then the images are like, see, these are violent. And it's the same script every single time.
I actually think they pay for infiltrators. They actually pay people
to go in too. Yeah.
And they did this with Black Lives Matter, by the way. They'll pay people to go in as if they're with those groups and start trouble so that they can turn around and say, oh, you see, they're violent. And they do that. So if there even were, which I have not seen, violence from the side of the pro-Palestinian protests, my first thought would be that it was a plant. That would be my first thought, because I was at the one in DC in November 4th. There were like a few 100,000 people. And I did not see one incident that was even remotely hostile in the entire day. So I find it very hard to believe. So when I see it, I don't even believe it.
The other
Well,
thing that I've
sorry, go
no,
ahead.
no, please. Yeah, just
This is just something that makes me very sad, is that like when I hear somebody claim anti-Semitism, I don't believe it. Like
Yep.
because 9 out of 10 times it's not. It's either fake, it's been faked,
Yep.
or it's like a case like the ADL counting a sign that says Zionism equals racism or something
Right.
as a hate crime. Like, I mean, yeah. So it makes me very sad because number one, I don't feel like I can't think of any organization or like web page or anything that is like meant to protect Jewish people from actual anti-Semitism. I don't know that such a group exists in North America that isn't actually a Zionist organization using anti-Semitism to further that project. So I don't even feel like that there is any group that I could trust that is there to protect me from actual anti-Semitism. Number two, what makes me also sad beyond belief is that when I see these videos, when I see Zionists that I know, when I see especially people that I don't know that like are like the vitriol in telling these students that they hope that they get raped and that they're beheaded and that they're, like these like rape fantasies and like what's projected onto gay people, go to Gaza and God, well, this and this will happen to you. It's like literally no one's been thrown off a roof for being gay in Gaza. I offered $100. Anybody can find me an example, I will pay you. Of course, nobody came back because it's never happened. And it is just, I see my people, I see the ugliness of what it does. It's like re-scrambling the DNA of our people in a way that is what happens to an oppressor. When you dehumanize another group of people, when you oppress them, you're not human anymore.
That's right.
So, I mean, on many levels, I mean, just talking about comedy, like comedy is something that Jewish people are known for, that we've excelled at, that is part of our culture. Have you ever seen a funny Israeli? Like, they don't know how to do, I mean, I know a couple that are, anti-occupation Israelis. They're like, I could count them on one hand. They're not even all comedians, but like,
Right.
okay, but they're like, any of their comedy, it's like right-wing comedy in the US. It's horrific. And it's like, how do you even call yourself Jewish? Like, you're like ruining everything. And so from like something as stupid as that, but like it runs through everything. And it's like, it's created so much ugliness in our people. And it brings me so much shame and so much fear of what, if this continues, if people continue to double down in this tribal way over this ideology, this is already what we're going to be known for.
Yeah, it's very upsetting. And I've gotten to the point now, and I always talk about how I spend a lot of time dialing for dollars. But now, like when a Jewish name comes up on the dialer, I cringe. I'm kind of like, okay, I have to question, are not for a genocide? Like I actually have to question. And it's really, it's upsetting.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been saying for like, I don't want to be associated with this. Don't associate me with that. I don't want that. And in reality, what you were saying before, that I look at this like this: Zionist Jews or Jews that are Zionists have become exactly what the Nazis created them to be. I believe that Jews that follow in that mindset, they have become that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really just like, that's how it will be seen in history when it's condensed and it's looked at over time. I do believe that this is not going to age well.
No. Yeah, it is that. It's, you know, it's taking all the wrong lessons from having power now. And I saw Ta-Nehisi Coates, I hope I'm saying his name right, do a talk early on as part of like the Palestinian Literature Festival or PalFest. There's all these lectures on YouTube from early on, like just sort of maybe November. There's a big thing in the church here, and it was all recorded. And anyways, he talks about it. That when he went to Israel, when he went to the West Bank, like what he thought he was going to a foreign country, but when he got there, it was all very immediately familiar. Like he had been there, but he'd seen this before, and referencing, you know, Jim Crow and segregation, and that the Jewish people, having been through, you know, tremendous oppression for centuries and a genocide, to have gotten, you know, this power and to use it in this way is exactly drawing all the wrong lessons. And, you know, as opposed to really, you know, the end of slavery and the end of apartheid, and where it wasn't the same lessons learned, you know.
No, we don't seem to learn very well. And a big part of that is that we don't teach proper history. And I feel like we're watching it in live time. Like when you look at the language of how things are said and how they're used, this is why words matter, because the words we use now, the language we use now, will control the narrative of what we say. Like that'll control the narrative that we hear about in history. And we see so much of it is so problematic. Like we see what we weren't taught properly. So it's so important to get this right, which is why I don't even like the word ceasefire. I don't like the term war. You know, like there's certain things that are going to change what this is over time. And I don't want us to do that.
What has worked, like in terms of, I don't know from a campaign perspective, but in terms of a like interpersonal perspective, have you been found that something works in particular in terms of opening people up to the unlearning process?
You know, I'm in a very unique position because most people know me in a way where they don't just want to approach me with this stuff, because I feel like there's probably somewhat intimidating. So I don't really talk to people about it. And I don't bring it up personally in my personal life with people, because like there are certain people, if somebody wants to know, I'm happy to engage. So if somebody asks, I will engage. But otherwise, I'm not bringing it up, because quite honestly, if somebody's not receptive to it, I'm not banging my head on that wall. But when I'm talking to people like voters and constituents, it isn't even the main thing that comes up.
I'm sure.
And it isn't. And the reality is, for most people, especially the people that I spend most of my time serving, like when you're talking about vulnerable communities, this is not their top issue. They're worried about how they're going to feed their kids and that they're working 3 jobs. And like, so these are issues that generally come up with Jewish people, generally, people of means, generally people of privilege. So it comes up sometimes dialing for dollars. It comes up among certain constituents. But the bottom line is, the people that I know are what I call too far gone. I just don't, because at the end of the day, there will be people that die thinking they're right, just like there were segregationists that died thinking that was the right way. Not everybody makes it over to the right side of history before they die. That's just the fact.
Right. And with older people, to me, it's like a lost cause, you know? So it's sort of like Gen X on down kind of.
Yeah. I do the best I can when people ask, and do it as non-confrontational as I can. I also often recommend reading material to people, because when it comes from others, especially if you can give somebody a nice little library of potential reading, like Ilan Pappy's book or any of the new historians, Rashid Khalidi, any of the, like, just those books are really good. So I also do that. Like I'll say, look at this information. That's, as opposed to me saying you're supporting you're a Zionist cult member and we need to end the Zionist state. I don't open with that.
No, I do. That's why I'm alone. No family, no wife.
Well, on that note, let's try to end on a positive note. We do have a clip of your stand-up.
Oh, good.
So that way, anybody who is not familiar with Jess can now check it out.
Yeah, let's play it.
Here we go.
It's been an entertaining relationship with my wife the whole way through, really, from the first night we got together. The first night we got together, we were very drunk. It was very romantic. And as we were taking clothes off, she stopped me and she goes, "You might see something you don't like." I know. I was like, "Did you not wax?" Because I haven't either. You know, it's fine. We're both women. This is like 50% of the reason we do this. You know? And she's like, "No, that's not it. I have a tattoo." And I was like, "Is it a swastika? Like what is?" And she's like, "No, it's the map of Israel, and it says Palestine over top in Hebrew letters." And I was like, maybe we could cover that up with a swastika.
I'm always
But
like,
that's-
which one did they pick? Yeah.
But that's like, that would be like a typical, like almost Ashkenazi Jewish mindset. Like it would almost be preferred for it to be.
Yeah.
to
I mean,
be
at this
that.
point, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's all, you've heard the term peppers, right? What a pepper is? They're progressive except for Palestine.
Wow. Okay. I did not. I know progressive, and I didn't know that. You know what? Okay, so this is so random, but pepper is like a slur for a French Canadian person.
Really?
Yeah, like amongst like English speaking Anglo.
Oh my goodness.
So growing up, it was like I always understood it as like, oh my God, like this is like, I mean,
That I had no idea. I'm so
No.
sorry. I didn't know at all. But,
but
P for progressive except for Palestine. And the woman that I followed just says, "Oh, you know, the peppers."
I was like, no, but okay, this will make you feel better. Is that so? I grew up with this idea of like, this is such a bad word, like, and I think it came from Pepsi, like, because Quebecois people drank Pepsi and Anglos drank Coke. Like, this is how stupid our issues are. Like, it's so, I mean, like Canada,
basic.
it's like a joke.
Very basic.
It's like kindergarten class, and like, and anyways, and when I started doing comedy in French for a few years in Montreal, that was like really the first time, because we were very like separate, because when it's language, like culturally, I didn't watch French stuff on TV. I watched Canadian, like English Canadian, or like American mostly, TV and movies and culture. And then all my friends, we spoke English. And so it was only when I started doing comedy that I made like actual, Quebecois friends. And one time I was just thinking about this, and like, it hadn't come up in so many years, because like also the question of separatism had died down a lot since like the year of the referendum and everything. And so and the big exodus, especially Anglo Jews anyway, saw, like you picked up on like nationalists. They were like, this doesn't seem good. Yeah. So anyway, I was like really nervous, and I was like, so do you guys, like, I just am wondering, like, you guys know the bad, like the slur, the bad word, like whatever I was trying to translate, like that English people would say about like, you know,
right.
And I would like as if I was like saying the N-word or something, like I was,
right.
And they're like, no, like, what are you talking about? And then I said pepper, and they were like, they had like no idea. Like literally, they didn't even know. It didn't mean anything to them. And it was like, so anyway, so that to make you feel better, apparently
it doesn't offend that many
never
people.
Went to, but this is like when the only issue is like language, whatever you're saying, like it never gets to them. So it has actually no impact. They were just like, yeah, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, good. So then pepper is progressives except for Palestine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know the idea for sure, because especially doing comedy, like I do very progressive audiences in, let's say, New York or LA, but the only time I've had like pushback is on, Palestine. And because there are more Jews and also a lot of Israelis in New York and LA, where that issue in a less progressive place, like in the middle of the country, would be like, not so much of an issue.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely an issue for most people, but it's not an issue that is for their personal life going to affect their ability to put food on the table, for example. So when they bring up these polls about, oh, it's not even that high on their list and so on, it's got nothing to do with it. It may not be high on their personal list, but you better believe that a lot of them are making their political decisions, even if it's, 10th on the list. It might be the same for me, but I know that anybody who's supporting a genocide is not getting my support. How could you do it? Because then there is no line. There's no line that can't be crossed. And for you to be a part of this messaging, which is so important, and I do believe that Jen has an excellent chance to win this race based on information that I can't talk about, but let's just say that we're feeling like there's like a real opportunity here. So what I am going to ask of you is, if you know people who may be interested in helping out on the campaign, phone banking, for example, is very big because you could do it from anywhere. Anybody who may be in South Florida who would be interested in canvassing. And then, of course, we do need, more donations. So anybody who can contribute to this campaign, it's 100% grassroots. We're doing good, but we want to do great. We don't want to leave any stone unturned. We want to have a lot of cash on hand for the final 6 weeks. And, we need to raise a decent chunk of money over the next few weeks. So with that said, like, as I'm alluding to, if there is anything that you would like to do to help, or anybody that that would, it'd be tremendously appreciated. And obviously this will drop, and several clips will drop with it as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I will definitely, I started a Substack where I've written some longer essays on, in terms of like answering Zionist talking. I'll include links in my socials and there as well. Do what I can. I did. In speaking of atonement, I need to make one.
Okay.
One. Can I? One.
Okay. Sure.
Mea culpa. I was a big Hillary girl, and not. I like Bernie, but I wasn't like a Bernie hater. But I definitely was. And again, can't vote. And when the whole Debbie Wasserman thing happened, I didn't understand it as a big deal, because in Canada, I don't know, we don't have the same system, and the party just picks who they want, and nobody, we don't have the whole primary thing or
so even, now that
So I have said, I because I was, I was working, I was in the human rights world, whatever, to the time of trickle down economics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in humanitarian intervention. And when she said, women's rights are human rights in Beijing, I was of this generation. And then I moved to the US in the spring of 2016. So it was I'm like, this is going to, and anyways, there was something and I had a lot of people push back on me, and I got so I was wrong. So I want to say that I was wrong.
Okay. That's okay. Look, I voted for Bill twice. Look, we learn as we go, but yeah, Hillary is not our friend. Are you doing?
But you know what? I will say.
Okay, you got to see this now.
I'm doing this for you only because you're a comedian, and I haven't done this in a while, but you'll appreciate it.
He has some bits that he does.
I just wanted to come on here and thank you for your support all those years. Listen, I know that you generally go for the ladies, but I'm a very special gentleman, as you know.
Oh, you're special.
Just in case you're ever thinking about it. My wife has driven me to insanity more times than I can count. I can't decide whether it would have been better or worse for her to win the presidency, and then I'd have to live with that ego. But I got 2 terms. So that's something that she'll never have. But hopefully she don't see this and know that I'm giving her a hard time. So, we all evolve except for me. I'm kind of just stuck in my old ways, Jen.
You're
you're
stuck.
I'm Slick Willie.
I mean, one thing I do still credit Hillary Clinton for, and since it's still Pride, I will say, I do think she was, a pioneer of the open marriage and polyamory. I think she was on the forefront of opening up a marriage. And she really took a lot of heat for that. And I think, I think we can still credit her with that.
Well, anything I could do to help. I'm glad I played a role. Bye.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's that.
So that's my Bill Clinton.
That's his Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. Jess, how can people find
Yeah.
you? Get in touch with your work. It was great having
Follow
on
you
the
on what? Are you your Instagram, right?
I'm
Like
like mostly on Instagram. And then from there, look, I have a link tree. My website isn't so up to date, but I will say, I have a comedy special coming out that I taped a year ago. I don't have the date yet, but I will definitely be posting it on Instagram, and there'll be like a watch party on YouTube, maybe something like this for the chat.
Cool.
I taped it a year ago, and then I just have not been in the mode to like look at it until recently, but it is very funny, and there is some material relevant to this, and also a lot of other stuff that is not political.
Okay, cool. Well, I would definitely promote. Like if you forward it to us, I will definitely help promote.
What's the Instagram handle again?
It's Jess _ Salomon on SALOMON.
Well, guys, make sure you get over there and subscribe, follow Jess's work, support her if you can. She is clearly supporting us, getting the message out there to, I think last I checked, the Instagram post of Jen's campaign ad is at like 8,000 likes and like 2,000 shares.
Nice.
So it's definitely made the rounds.
Good.
Any and all exposure is, again, it takes it doesn't take a village, it takes a country. You want to unseat the person who in many ways, if we're being honest, is responsible for Donald Trump becoming president. This is the person. This is the person who really drove a very...
We could have had Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, we could have. Or quite frankly, if we had...
think about that. We would have been at the end of Bernie's second term.
And you know what? If it was a clean primary, it's almost very likely Hillary Clinton would have won. But you do what you do. And Wasserman Schultz had aspirations of being the Secretary of State. There's a lot of interesting things.
Can you imagine?
A lot of interesting things people will do for power, including wrecking a country. So let's have our moment in the sun, hopefully in 2 months. But in the meantime, make sure that you do check out Jess's work, which I find funny, and maybe you will too. And thank you for supporting Jen's work.
It's my pleasure. And thank you for having me. And I do want to say, because you introduced me this way, as like liking my self-deprecating comedy, because you're from New Jersey. And I feel like, this a little bit the Canada of the Northeast, it's like next to New York, right? It's like
that's good.
Well, they call us the armpit of New York, so
almost the armpit.
You are.
So long. Certain parts of Jersey is, yes. I will not say that it isn't. But hey,
it was really nice to meet you.
Yeah.
You too. I'm so glad. Say hi to your friends. And,
I will. She's gonna watch this. She'll watch this.
A lot of couples though, so there is enough to form at this
point.
Wait.
You know a lot of Jewish Palestinian couples?
I know. I can think of 3.
Okay, that's
2 that are straight and 1 that are lesbian.
No, I'm not talking about straight. I'm talking about specifically a Jewish woman and a Palestinian woman.
Okay. Yes, I know one. I mean,
one. Okay, one.
I have to check if they're still together, but yeah.
Exactly. And I'm telling. So if they're not, then I know the only other one. That's what I'm saying to you.
Do you know Ariel?
No.
Corinne? Okay.
No. So I know the only other one. I'm telling you.
Ariel is, well, she's a Jewish one. Anyway, she quit Google and the whole, anyway, she's very active.
Okay. No, this is not my phone.
I'll send you her info.
All right.
She quit Google over the like their surveillance technology. What is it called? I forget the name of it. Nimbus or whatever, one of those programs.
Thank you so much, Jess. Have a really good one.
It's a pleasure. You too. Bye.
Thanks, Jess.
Bye.
So well, not a love connection, but a friend connection.
I always find, like, it's like cool people. We get a lot of cool guests.
Double K, thank you very much. Always a pleasure and really appreciate you.
We appreciate you guys a lot. Hey, Chip.
But you get MSNBC, CNN, New York Times will trumpet the fact that he pled guilty. Yes, they have already done that. Specifically, you should see the Washington Post, which put out the worst one. The fact of the matter is,
you need to do a comparison.
Yeah.
I want to see, I am actually curious. I haven't looked yet, but I am curious what internationally, what the headlines look like. Like, I'm curious what the headlines in Australia look like and in UK and that, more so than I am about these tools.
The awareness of AIPAC's influence is growing by leaps and bounds.
Yes, it is.
The cat's out of the bag now. You're not putting that back in.
And let me tell you, people across the spectrum of party and religion are very equally annoyed. And a lot of people specifically about the fact that it's a foreign influence. That's something that a lot of, because they've been playing up the Russia and China fear for so long that level of like, saying, well, we don't need foreign influence. We don't need foreign influence. Well, so now that the shoe's on the other foot now. People are not liking it.
Carla, much appreciated. It's always great to have you here. Sable, thanks for Zionist Google to not shutting down these conversations. Well,
they do their best. Trust me. We'll
Yeah.
get stuck to the bottom of the pile when
It's
we're not going to be recommended.
And that's why I hate. Well, peppers are actually good. I happen to like
certain peppers.
Yes, not ghost peppers. That's a little tough.
Have I heard from John Kiriaki? I haven't, but I haven't reached out. That would be somebody good for you to bring on. But the truth is, it's like most of the time when Peter would reach out to people like John and whatever, it's because I'm like, oh, I want to talk to them, have them on the show. But now that I'm not co-hosting the show on the regular, it's not the same thing. And it isn't that people don't want to come on and talk to Peter, because I'm sure that they do, but I don't know that he necessarily thinks of the same people to.
Guys, I don't want to suffer alone. I don't want my team to suffer alone. Anybody who's good on the phone and can put some hours in, Jen really does have a chance to win this race. So make sure that you do sign up to Phone Bank.
She was lovely.
And if you are in South Florida, sign up to Canvas. And if you can donate, I would rather you donate to Jen than to Generational Change.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so guys, I can say something that we did last night that was really cool.
What?
We could talk about what we did last night, where we went.
Oh.
We could mention where we went last night. Who did we get to hang out with last night?
So this is not the first time Jen has been in a private function with Representative Ilhan Omar. I won't say where, I won't say when, I won't say with who.
She hugged me. She spontaneously came up to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and gave me a hug.
I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that if it was ever talked about in public, that Ilhan Omar with 100% is pulling for Jen to beat.
I'm not, and I won't, guys, like I won't post anything like about this in terms, like I won't make anything be visible, because even though Ilhan is like the most baddest ass, like seriously, like she wouldn't care if I posted a picture of the two of us. She wouldn't care.
The best part of the evening was that I did ask her a question. She did a Q&A at the end, and I actually asked her, because a lot of people don't know this, because they see her as this lightning rod of a representative who happens to be a Somalian refugee who wears a hijab. She is like the fourth most effective legislator in the U.S. House.
Yeah.
And so I asked her, well, considering all that you personally have to deal with on the regular, how are you such an effective legislator? Because she really is. And she said, well, for starters, I actually read the bills. And I just thought, when someone says that, she's basically telling you that this job is a joke. And most of the people,
that's not what she said. Right.
She's saying that this job is viewed as a joke by the people who, for the most part, are filling these positions.
The fact that she felt the need to point out that she specifically does read the stuff and actually does write her own legislation and contributes to writing her own legislation, which doesn't surprise me at all. And again, I will reiterate her autobiography, her book, I think it's called This Is Our America. I can't remember. I did audiobook. She's amazing. But anyway, she is particularly special as a legislator. She is very particularly special. She also gets the most amount of death threats out of any of them.
By far.
and she's just she is inspiring. She really is. She has an energy about her. She has this vibe about her. She comes off like a Jedi princess. She really does.
Yeah, she's got a Princess Leia thing going.
She does, but okay, granted, because she has her head covered. So yes, there is that sort of Jedi. Yes. But no, she has this she is magic.
Brandon, the fact of the matter is that most of them are controlled opposition, if not just about all of them. The thing that you have to remember is, which we've been saying for a long time, is that even if you elect Jen to Congress, that's not going to magically solve the problem.
No.
But ultimately, having someone like Jen in a position of power who could potentially rally the key ingredient to changing our fortunes, which is, of course, labor. And if you want to rally labor, that is ultimately what is going to make the difference. It's not unions, and that's not to say that unions don't have their value, but it is the labor movement that will decide whether we're able to save our republic. If we're not, then we are going straight to fascism and straight to the end of our system.
May Day 2028.
Yep. That's what's going to happen.
That's what I want. I want a general strike May Day 2028.
Yeah.
I want us all to get our ducks in a row so that by May 1st, 2028, that we can do that. And I'm saying it because it really is sort of like a beat the clock situation, because in the same amount of time that I'm trying to kind of figure out like the best way to lead to that, the establishment has figured out that cop cities all over the country are the best way to stifle that. So they're already working on stifling what we haven't even yet been able to plan. So that's why this is a very, it's tenuous. It's very tenuous, but we really need to figure it out.
Yeah, we do.
But labor is the key.
So
do you want me to go away now?
No, we can end on a high note here. Well, I think it's a high note, but this is a clip of Julian Assange. So let's play.
Oh, good.
Well, it'll have a number. We don't. Okay.
This is today? No way. This is today?
Yeah.
He looks like that? He looks like that?
He could have been malnourished. You know, that could happen. Like you get that.
What, malnourished? He looks so nourished. What are you talking about?
Well,
how can that? He looks so healthy.
Been in a much more favorable position and situation over the last few months. Just determining his fate.
Because let me tell you, I am hoping. I hope that is from today, because if that is from today, then he looks good to me, because from what we have heard from people who have seen him, he has looked frail and sick and almost like mental, like having delusions just from being so ill and like malnourished. So if that's him, I hope that's today.
You can still talk crap about Florida.
Oh, Florida is still a shit show, Donald.
Yeah.
Florida is still a shit show. Make no mistake. But there are signs. I will tell you today, a lot of my call list were Florida people, not my district necessarily, but Florida people. And there were a lot of people that did seem to like the idea of the Democratic Party going in a fresh direction and like really feeling like almost they could get behind that concept. So I feel like we could potentially turn some things around in our state. I do think we could point out that the AFL-CIO did endorse Stanley Campbell, who is running in the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate for Florida. The first person that got in that race was Debbie Mercoso-Powell. And now that Stanley Campbell got in, this guy, and he was just endorsed by the AFL-CIO, which I think is probably for a statewide race, I would say. And I think that's interesting. Did Debbie endorse Debbie?
Not that I'm aware.
No, okay. So she hasn't necessarily put her.
I don't know how much she's really putting herself out.
Right, she hasn't putting herself. She's not getting involved in that. We did go to the AFL-CIO candidates reception. We did that as well this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully some people notice that in a way that appreciates the contribution we made. My goodness. But politics is all about transactions.
It was expensive.
It's all
it was expensive. We paid a lot of money to not get an endorsement.
Well, I thought it would.
And the only endorsement I did check who they have listed for an endorsement, and they do have Debbie and Moskowitz, but it specifically says endorses in the general election. So I don't know if they're going to endorse in my race. They might not. They very well might not, and that's great. But they do have. I did see that they do have her listed.
I would consider that a win if you.
Again, that's only if they don't update it, because they're the same place where it says that they endorse Stanley Campbell. It says they list who they endorse for Congress, and it does list Debbie and Moskowitz, but it specifically says endorse in the general election.
Well, maybe his.
I don't know.
Maybe your comment did make a difference.
I don't.
Maybe it was.
Well, I don't know that. For all I know, that's been up for days, and I just never noticed it. I've never looked. I've never looked.
It wasn't decided.
Well, Stanley Campbell wasn't, but I don't know that they didn't have Debbie and Jared up there for the general.
Well, here's the thing that didn't make any sense.
That might have been how they appeased her.
Could I please?
Yes.
So Stanley Campbell was, and I finally met him, he was at the AFL-CIO event. Now, since we were there, we noticed something. Debbie Mercoso-Powell was not at the event.
No.
And she is from Miami.
That is interesting. So she must have known that she wasn't getting the endorsement.
But that's also the sign of a weak candidate who can't actually face the music. That's not good.
Well, here's the thing. I got to tell you, in all fairness to her. If not only that she knew she wasn't getting the endorsement, but she also knew that he was, then no, she doesn't need to go. I knew that I was not getting the endorsement. I knew that. I knew that the day of it. I knew I wasn't getting the AFL-CIO endorsement, wasn't expecting it. But if I knew for a fact before we went that they had endorsed Debbie in the primary, no, I would not have gone to the candidate reception.
All right, fair enough. But I do think, I mean, again, I can't really say how much it necessarily matters. I also think that Jen's race being as competitive as it is, for reasons that we can't discuss at the moment, but just rest assured that it is a competitive race. What is more important, I believe, when you get the AFL-CIO endorsement is when you get it statewide, because there is going to be ads that will run as a result. And in the more, for the limited amount of actual real estate it makes up, but the I-4 corridor in Florida, which covers Orlando, Tampa, out to the Space Coast, it really that's where the progressive energy in the state actually exists. It's really weird too, because Central Florida is the most conservative part of Florida, but you have this part that's like blue, like right in the middle. And it just so happens that it's a pretty progressive blue.
Yeah.
This is where Maxwell Frost is a congressional rep. This is where Anna Eskamani is a state rep. This is where
we have the best. That's where our best left organizing takes place.
Right there.
Is there.
100%.
In this state of Florida, correct.
Mm-hmm. And less about the Democratic Party and more about just progressive politics in general.
Yeah.
So I would say that at the state level, if Stanley Campbell is getting that support and it matters for him getting it in that particular area. And if I remember correctly, I don't think he's Jacksonville, but he's like north.
Where he's from?
Yeah, he's not based down here.
No, I think you're right. I think it's Jacksonville.
And there are a lot of people in this country, frankly, that are tired of the Southeast Democratic Party influence. They're tired of what they consider to be the real carpetbaggers, which are people that are not from here. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is not from Florida. She's from New York. Like a lot of other people in this part of the state that are in the Democratic Party, they come from other parts of the country. You go up into the central regions of Florida, you go up to the Panhandle and Jacksonville, most of the people are Floridians. They're multi-generational Floridians, and even to the Democratic voters, that matters to them.
Yeah.
It just so happens that we have such a sizable population in this part of the state that ends up covering it. But the truth is, this part of the state, statewide, doesn't win. This is not where, if you're ever going to have a statewide Democratic elected representative again, and the best chance you're going to get is most likely for the governorship in a couple of years, depending on where things go with housing in the state. The best shot you're going to have is with somebody like an Anna Eskamani. But
Eskamani's 26.
Mm-hmm. So in the meantime, we appreciate all of you guys coming on. The Self-Care Maven, of course, Metalopoly, Donald James.
I've missed you guys.
Totally not me.
Sometimes I pop in the chat when you're live. I try to support.
Yeah. Chris.
Uh-oh. See, I think I'm bad luck.
Word Girl, Brandon Sinat, Jimmy Zimzam.
Jimmy Zimzam's now a Patreon.
Henry Kajawa, Bloomster.
Who's Brandon? I don't know that.
I don't
person.
know.
That was a new
Ray J.
Chip.
Yes, but no.
Chris Garrett.
Rajiv Deyasundara.
Oh,
yeah, they kind of are a little bit.
Rajiv
I'm not going to disagree with you on that one.
Well, yeah. I mean, in terms of the nefariousness of their dollars and what they're doing, yeah, absolutely. To me, the difference in a legislator taking money from AIPAC or taking money from the NRA is there's no difference. It's just as nefarious.
Salma Shalom. Who else do we have that I haven't said?
That almost sounds like Shama Sawant.
Almost. Nelson Ortega. You don't like my music.
Metal.
I think I said metal.
Okay.
Right? I'm pretty sure I did.
Okay.
Let's see. Anybody else? I got most of you guys.
I really liked her. First of all, I love the fact that she's ginger.
She hasn't.
Canadian.
Shahid Abdullah Anzarov.
And Jewish. And a lesbian. That is some serious minority power.
Dating.
She was dating
Palestinian,
married to a Palestinian.
Yeah.
I know.
Sable Minor. Linda Fontes.
We don't get that many ginger. We don't get that many ginger tribe. I mean, there's definitely some. There's some, but it's not as it's not that common.
Stephen Steve. I wonder if that's really your name. Flower Punk Chip.
Ooh, that sounds like an ice cream flavor.
14 years incarcerated for being 100% accurate. Never forced to redact, unlike the New York Times and the Guardian.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? Like I would love to see like a lawsuit. I would love to see.
Yeah.
Now I guarantee you that part of the deal
Can't sue.
is that.
Charles
But
Perlman.
almost like I would love to see Stella Morris sue for like loss of consortium. I would love to see that like be the bane of their existence, the people that kept this going.
Carla Harrington, Alex Suarez, Arif Hassan. That might be it. But you guys know the drill. We really have. Tony Clifton showed up.
Oh,
And it certainly isn't.
Tony Clifton. Do most people know who Tony Clifton is?
I don't know.
Okay, guys. So if you, I don't know what's the
Dab.
generation of most of our people. I think most of our people are my age or older. You think?
No.
No. Yeah, guys. I have no idea what our because there's so many people now. I have no idea what our general demographic is anymore. It used to be older people. But guys, if you don't know who Tony Clifton is, seriously look it up. It's really an interesting story. It involves Andy Kaufman, which is what I think about George Santos. I really did think George Santos was he was going to rip off his face and it was going to be like Andy Kaufman in a George Santos mask.
Are you a ginger, Travers? Because that's why I didn't say your
No.
You don't have a soul.
No, Travers can't be a ginger. Because if he were a ginger, we would already know he's a ginger because he's constantly commenting on the redheads. So if he were one, we would already know he's one because he even made another comment on the redheads on this stream about Jess, saying, okay, now she's a real ginger, because he has in the past criticized my saying that Claire Daly is a redhead. But let me tell you, as a gringo, she is to me, she is the feisty redheaded Irish lady. Can't you let me have my fantasy?
And if you are supporting her campaign, please think about phone banking for this one Democrat that isn't so bad. Think about donating to this one Democrat that isn't so bad. One more time for all of you guys, please help out however you can. We can certainly use it.
Yeah, for sure, guys. And definitely make sure you're following us.
If we're entertaining you, then the least you could do is show a little consideration for us. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
But we appreciate you all. Smash that like button, share, subscribe to all those things we ask you to do, and we'll see you Thursday.
Well, I probably won't.
You'll see me. Bye.